The limits of human thinking, going beyond is and isn't. People naturally try to fit everything into simple categories. Things either exist or they don't. Something is either true or false. But what if reality isn't that simple? Some of the deepest spiritual traditions in the world, especially those from India and Tibet, suggest that ultimate truth is beyond all the categories we try to place it in. There's a concept in ancient philosophy that challenges how we think about reality. One that says truth is not just beyond yes and no, but also beyond both and neither. This way of seeing things isn't just a mental exercise, it's a shift in perspective that can lead to deep spiritual insight. Let's explore what it means and how it can change the way we understand reality. So imagine you're trying to answer a big question like, does the universe exist? In Western thinking, we might expect a straightforward answer, either yes or no. But some ancient philosophers broke this down into 4 possibilities. Yes, it exists. No, it doesn't exist. It both exists and doesn't exist. Or it neither exists nor doesn't exist. It's something beyond all of this. At first, this might sound confusing or even impossible, but this way of looking at things was never meant to be a logical puzzle. Instead, it was designed to break the limits of how we normally think. When people hear about these 4 possibilities, their minds usually struggle. They want to grab onto one of them and say, this is the right answer, not the others. But the real insight comes when you let go of all 4 and see that ultimate reality is beyond these human-made concepts. Ultimate reality is well beyond these mind-made ideas. Some of the greatest spiritual teachers in history used this way of thinking to help people let go of rigid beliefs. For example, a Buddhist philosopher named Nagarjuna used this approach to show that everything we think of as real is actually dependent on other things. If something is only real because of how we define it, then is it truly real at all? By breaking apart fixed ideas, he helped people see beyond mental labels into direct experience. In Hindu philosophy, there's also an idea that ultimate reality is beyond words and concepts. Some teachers explain it by saying, not this, not that. In other words, if you try to define what is ultimately true, you'll always end up with something that isn't quite right. The only way to truly understand it is to stop trying to define it at all. In some Tibetan traditions, this is explained as the natural state of awareness, a way of seeing things clearly without filtering them through ideas. This way of thinking isn't just for deep philosophers, though, not just for monks in caves. It can even change how you experience everyday life in several ways. First, we assume that if we can describe something, we understand it. But words are just labels. They don't capture the full experience of something. When we realize this, we stop being so attached to rigid definitions of who we are, what life is, or what we think is true. Second, we move beyond either-or thinking. We live in a world that encourages black and white thinking. Things are either good or bad, legal or illegal, healthy, unhealthy, right or wrong. But life is far more complex than that. When we embrace the idea that truth isn't limited to simple categories, we become way more open-minded and free. Third, we experience a more direct reality. Instead of seeing the world through our thoughts about it, we actually begin to experience it as it is. This is why many meditation practices focus on simply being aware, watching thoughts without getting caught in them. Fourth, and finally, we let go of the need for absolute answers. Many spiritual seekers struggle because they want absolute certainty. They want to know the truth. They want to know exactly what is true and what isn't and why. But this way of thinking shows that seeking a final, fixed truth might be a misunderstanding, might be the wrong way to approach the whole thing. Real wisdom comes from letting go of the need to grasp onto rigid concepts. So, how to apply this to our own life? As I was saying, you don't need to become a philosopher or a monk to benefit from this way of seeing things. When faced with a difficult question, just notice if you're stuck in either or thinking. Try opening to the idea that the answer might be more subtle or more complex or even beyond words. Practice letting go of labels. When you have a really strong opinion about something, ask yourself, am I seeing this clearly or am I just seeing my idea of it? Try meditation or silent reflection. Instead of analyzing everything intellectually, practice sitting quietly and just observe what arises. Finally, embrace uncertainty, realizing that some truths just can't be put into simple words. And that doesn't mean nothing matters or nothing is true. It just means that there's something deeper than mental, intellectual explanations. At first, this idea that the ultimate truth is beyond is and isn't can seem frustrating. But if you sit with it, something interesting can happen. Instead of feeling confused, you actually start to feel free. You realize that reality isn't something you need to put into a perfect box. It's something to experience directly. And this isn't just another abstract idea. It is a radical shift in how we live. Instead of constantly trying to define and control reality with words, we begin simply to trust it and let it be what it is. Instead of searching and seeking for that perfect explanation, we become more comfortable not really needing one. And in the end, the greatest truths aren't something we grasp with our minds. They're something we wake up to through direct experience.